Hello everyone, I hope you're enjoying your day off. In this video, I'm going to go over our final paper. As you know, you're supposed to be writing a paper on some topic that's related to our class. So it could be something like, on emotion or desire or addiction, all those types of things. Most of you already, however, have submitted a general paper idea that you're working on. So at this point now, you're going to have to start to think about it more uh, intensely um, because you're going to have to provide some sort of thesis and resources for your next discussion forum post. Anyway, so this paper is going to be a 5 to 8 page paper. It's going to be an argumentative and slightly research-based paper. You're going to have a formal introduction, a short historical piece. You're going to have to use both the deductive and an inductive argument. Consider an objection to your thesis or one of your arguments, and then reply to it. And then, in addition, you'll have to provide a conclusion, and of course, a works cited page as well. Make sure it's standard font, double spaced, normal margins. If you don't know what a formal introduction is, a formal introduction is what I mean by that is you're going to have a catch, a topic statement, a roadmap, and somewhere in there your thesis. The roadmap, if you don't know, is like a table of contents for the different sections of your paper. Each paragraph in an essay should work together, kind of like premises do in an argument. So, if you don't know why this paragraph is before this paragraph, then, the paper isn't going to make sense to your reader either. So, figure that out. Each piece should be working with each other. Anyway, the table of content, the roadmap rather, then is a table of contents for those pieces. And it's going to tell your reader what to expect. In that roadmap, you can provide your thesis. If you want to, you can put your thesis ahead of your roadmap or after your roadmap. I usually include it as the last thing in mine. And so here's an example of one here. So it says everyone knows that God is greatest possible being, but maybe everyone is wrong. So that was a catch. Um, in this paper, I questioned the presumption that God must be the greatest possible being. So that's a topic statement. So it's important to have a topic statement because you want to inform your reader what you're going to be talking about, right? You don't want, and it shouldn't be incredibly ambiguous either. It shouldn't be something like, I'm going to talk about love. Like, be more specific. What is it about love that you're going to be talking about or whatever? And if you chose love, that had nothing to do. I wasn't directed at any of you. Okay, so the next part then is transition a phrase to the roadmap. So you'll see the green, then it's my topic statement in its paper. I questioned presumption that God must be the greatest possible being. My process in doing this is to, and then you can launch into the roadmap. One, detail some of the reasons people have thought God is the greatest possible being. To argue that these reasons are insufficient to demonstrate that God is the greatest possible being. Three, propose that if we limit God's traits, we should conclude that God is the greatest actual being. And four, demonstrate that God cannot be the greatest actual being. And finally, I argue that given our analysis, it seems as if God must be the greatest possible being. So, as you see, this yellow part is referring to the roadmap, and that roadmap there is it for that paper. These 1 through 5, these are the different sections of the paper, and so the reader can follow along, right? And so if the reader is reading the paragraph that should be referring to number 2, or the section doesn't have to be one paragraph that's referring to number 2. But that section actually comes in the 4th section, then the reader's going to be confused, or I need to fix that. So the point is that the paragraphs after the sections after your introduction, they need to follow along with the structure of the roadmap. Okay, and so also make sure you have a very clear thesis. Make sure your thesis is something you can defend. That's going to also be important. Okay, so the next part of your paper is going to be the historical section. Now, what I mean by the historical section is what I want you to like set the stage for your reader. Tell them, what is important about this topic, and tell them, tell us why we should care. And then, in addition to that, tell us what other people have said about this topic. So this is where your research is going to come in. So you want to have a little bit of a literature review for this paper, which is going to be kind of what are some of the arguments and what are some of the theories that have been discussed and have been held by different thinkers who have discussed this topic. And then you're going to kind of set the stage for your contribution, or so if you could do something like, there's these two theories about what do you call it, discussed. One of them claims it's bad for us, the other one says it's good. I'm going to here's what people have said who argues that it's bad for us. Here's what people said argue that's good for us, and I'm going to agree with people who say it's bad. Like that's fine. You can do that kind of thing, so you don't have to go into everything. But and that could be your contribution too, is saying that I'm going to agree with such and such person. Now, if you do one of those kinds of papers, like you're going to agree with such and such person as opposed to this person, or this theory as opposed to this theory. If you're going to do the first one, the agreeing with one person over another, don't just give their reasons and give the other person's reasons and say you like this person's reasons more. You'll need to give this person argument and this person's argument, and then you need to compare and contrast them and explain why this one is better than this one. So maybe this one, you can create an argument using this person's theory, argument, deductive argument, and inductive argument, using this person's theory to show that it's superior to this one. So make sure to add your own contribution. That's most important. Is first of all, you need to get the forms right. But secondly, you need to get the literature accurate. And but thirdly, I want to see your own contribution. Where I'm really looking to see how you're able to structure this, able to defend the premises, and create a seamless slate, mid-sized paper. Okay. So the next thing that you have to do is you're going to have to then argue for your thesis using a deductive argument. Now, you don't have to just splat the deductive argument just like this. You should embed it in a paragraph. So start to argue for your position, start to make your way there. And then anywhere along the way in arguing for your position, you can include a deductive argument. And you don't have to say, I'm going to have a deductive argument in your roadmap. You just say, what you're going to talk about in that section. And then within that section, you need to have a deductive argument defended in a way that you've been taught and that way you've practiced a lot. So you don't have to don't just jump in where you start in the main body of the essay. Don't just jump in with the deductive arguments splattered in. You need to have good transitions. You need to have it needs to be clear why one paragraph precedes the other one, and those types of things. Okay. So, but in your defense, right, in one of those sections, you'll have to include a deductive argument, and you know how to defend that. We've talked about it a lot. You'll also have to include an inductive argument, and you've had a lot of practice doing this too. So with the inductive argument, you'll have to do the same thing you did with the deductive argument. You don't just splat the inductive argument, right in our face. Make a good, smooth transition. It needs to be clear why the inductive argument is there in standard form. One good way to do that is to, you can set it up by saying something like, if you want to argue about, say, emotions, right? You would say disgust is a moral emotion, right? So maybe you're going to argue that disgust is a moral emotion. So what you want to do then is you'd want to say something like, some people argue that disgust is a moral emotion. This seems right for a lot of reasons. One of those reasons is that people can be disgusted when there's no sort of bodily fluids or anything around. They can be disgusted by other people's actions. And so therefore people consider that to be a moral emotion. To expand on this, I will compare a disgust with another emotion that we know to be a moral emotion. And conclude that disgust also is a moral emotion. And then you can launch into your standard form inductive argument, analogy in that case, and then do your defense and all that kind of stuff. Now, when you're done doing that, the next section is to consider an objection to your position. Now, here you can make it up, right? You can consider an objection to your position. Or you can find one that's in the literature that you think is relevantly objects to you. The difference, what should it be objecting to, depends on how you want your paper to be. So it doesn't have to be an objection directly to your main thesis. You can actually include an objection to any part of your argument. So the consideration of an objection part of your essay, it doesn't have to be after all the arguments. It could be anywhere, after one of your first arguments, anywhere after your first argument. So you need to consider at least the one objection to your argument, right? So if you have like that, if you're arguing that disgust is a moral emotion, and you have one of these premises comparing disgust with something like resentment or greed or something, then so I got sidetracked thinking that greed, if whether or not it's really an emotion or not. Anyway, so what you're going to want to do then is you can pick out one of those premises that's comparing, say, disgust with greed, pick it out and then dissect it and say how it's weak, and then you say how that or you'll say how that's weak, and you'll say how that weakens the whole argument, right? So it's an objection to you. You can also object to the way the premises interact with each other overall, right? Remember when you're doing an analysis of an argument earlier in the term, we learned about this. You consider if it's inductive or deductive. If it's deductive, you want to know if it's valid or invalid. Okay, so if it's valid, then you need to analyze that first premise. Make sure it's clear, make sure it makes sense. Analyze that second premise, make sure it makes sense, make sure it's really working with that first premise, make sure there's no sort of poor reasoning connecting those two. If that seems to be okay, then look and see how the wording is on the third, on the conclusion, right? You analyze that, analyze the flow. And then you can pick apart, after that, you can pick apart the words. Is the wording matching up? Is the wording actually accurate? Right, so you can pick these things apart in these different ways. You can also, if you after you've done that, if you want to do it that way, or if you don't want to do it that way, you can do this way too. Is you can look to see the way they have supported those premises, right? So the premises are fine. then you can see how you can point out how the person has defended his or her premises, right? And that's one of the hard parts, and you guys know that. So when you're objecting to your own position, you can look at your premises, you can look at the way your premises connect with each other, you can look at your wording, you can look at your defense of the premises or the defense of how the premises connect to the conclusion, right? So these are all things that are up for grabs. You can bring up counter evidence. These are all things that you can do. But after you're done with that, wherever that happens to land within the structure of your paper, you'll have to then reply to that objection. This reply does not have to be in standard form. It doesn't have to analyze the premises, but if you want to do that, more power to you. Okay, so if the clearer it is, the better it's going to be for you. But if you just wanted to give a paragraph reply to this, that would be fine. And then after that, you just got to do your conclusion, and you're good to go, except for the works cited page. Now, I don't think it's on here. I'll have to post an announcement about this, but my expectations for resources on this assignment is going to be at least one a page, no less than 6. So at least one a page, no less than 6. Now, you don't have to have a reference every page, but if you have 5 pages, you need to have 6 references. If you have 7 pages, you need to have 7 references. You need to make sure that they're not just all in the same section, and make sure you're not, just pulling references from all the same as they. So that's the resource expectation. No resource can be less than scholarly. So make sure you're using scholarly sources. You want to look for peer-reviewed journals. You want to look for books. You want to look for encyclopedia entries that are scholarly, say, for example, the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy. You obviously are going to be looking in psychology as well. So, SciIndex is really good, or SciInfo, and then Phil Index is really good for philosophy. So those are search engines for psychological and philosophical essays and books and stuff like that. Okay, well, so in your discussion forum then, for this coming discussion forum, what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to come up with a topic for your paper, a thesis, a rough thesis for your paper. Okay, you can change it. And then you need to come up with 3 sources and have a little description of each of those sources. All right. Well, I hope you have a wonderful weekend.